this growth mindset really allows us to look at a situation, a challenge, an issue, a problem, a mistake, and realize inside of all of that challenge is benefit. There's something I can learn. If nothing else, I'm learning what not to do the next time.
Adam, it's good to see you.
Yeah, you too, David. Welcome back.
Yeah, I know. It's been 10 days in the wild, in the mountains.
I know. I'm surprised you don't have this like giant beard going on.
I trimmed it up this morning.
Okay.
I was
there.
looking all grizzly.
Yeah,
sure. I was feeling like a mountain man, and
yeah.
Here I am back in civilization. But
it's good to have you. But you guys were out in Colorado for 10 days with the family.
Yes, we were north of Denver in a place called Fort Collins.
Yep.
So we jumped around. We did Rocky Mountain National Park.
Awesome.
We did St. Mary's Glacier. Got to even cold plunge in the Glacier Lake up there.
Wow.
Which was
like
cool.
bathwater, right?
It was just above above bathwater. That's right.
Wow.
But it was a great time, man. We enjoyed just time off with the family, and
that's awesome.
Just thankful to have a great team.
Yeah. So, that's fantastic, man. Glad you guys got to do that. Welcome back. Good to have you back.
Thanks.
But glad you guys got away for sure. So,
Absolutely.
Well, awesome. Well, welcome guys to another episode of the RevOps Recruiters podcast, where our mission is really to provide insights and best practices around finding, hiring, and retaining top revenue operations talent.
That's right. We're your hosts, Adam and David from RevSearch. Welcome.
So let's talk a little bit about what we're going to unpack today. David and I, we've had these conversations around fixed mindset, growth mindset. Obviously, we're always striving for that growth mindset. And so we had these conversations, and we really started to dive in a little bit. I wanted to understand that. What is the difference between these two? And so when we think about a growth mindset as defined by the lady coined it back around in the early 2000s, it's this idea that we don't believe that our talents, our abilities, our intelligence, our skill, that all those things are inherited, but instead we believe we have the ability to grow each of those, right?
Yeah.
So what I have, I'm not born with. Obviously, some people have more a greater starting point than others, but the idea that I could really grow into any of those if I focus on those with hard work, versus a fixed mindset would believe that what I have, I got when I was born, and I can never really make it much better. So I could never be as good at a skill or an ability or an intelligence level of somebody else if I wasn't born with it. That's more of a fixed mindset. And so what we want to contrast today is not necessarily those two ideas, because I think many of us have heard that, but how do we translate that into an organization, into a business, right? So we just want to talk a little bit about that. What are your thoughts on this whole idea of growth mindset versus fixed mindset?
Yeah, and like you said, we've seen this in different books, right? People are talking about it. Seems like a trendy thing in business and just personal conversations, right? About who you are as a person. Mm-hmm. But for me personally, it in its simplest form, I think of staying stagnant where you are, versus growth mindset, moving forward, having momentum forward. And, on a personal note, that can be experiencing failure, experiencing adversity. What happens when you experience those things? You can either stay stuck in the past in those failures, right? And not move forward, or you can see them as an opportunity to move forward and accelerate forward and learn and not stay stuck, but move forward. And, to those definitions, you can truly change moving forward. You can learn and you can improve yourself. So it's really this idea in its simplest form, staying stuck or moving forward and accelerating. That's what I think of when I think of growth mindset versus fixed mindset.
That's great. I think the good news is that if we really believe that this idea of growth mindset exists, which I do, and you do, I know many of us do, then the great thing is that we're not just born with what we've got. We have the ability to better ourselves, and that's what's exciting. So if we take that and we really translate it over to a business, I don't believe that businesses per se have growth mindsets or they have fixed mindsets. What I believe is that people have those, right? And so as you begin, the people in your organizations create the culture of your organization, right? So some companies might say we don't have a culture. Well, the reality is you do have a culture. It's just maybe not the culture that you want. And so the people within an organization create the culture of that organization. So if we think about how this applies to a business, my question, my idea would be, does the culture of your business have a growth-minded culture, or is it a fixed-minded culture? And you get to control that based on the things that you do within your organization. So today we've got 4 ideas that we really want to unpack around the benefits of having a growth culture inside your organization, and how you can apply those, and what you could see as outcomes based on that. So let's dive in there.
Yeah. I would say let's start with kind of the first idea here, and that is thriving on learning new things as a part of a growth culture. Let's unpack that.
Yeah, and so I think, David, you and I have talked about this many times, about the idea, particularly of RevOps leaders having curiosity. I think if you want to have a growth culture inside of your organization, you have to have curiosity at the forefront. You've got to be willing to say, hey, we want to learn something new. We're always looking for ways that we can get better. We're encouraging our people to bring new ideas, to bring new concepts. We want people to strive for new and not just stay stuck in status quo. We don't have words like, this is how we've always done it, right? That's not a saying within our organization. We're always striving for that idea of curiosity. And the thing about curiosity and learning and knowledge and growth is that it's not just gaining information that you put inside your head, right? Many of us are good at that. We listen to podcasts, we read articles, we read books. Something goes inside of our head and we think, that's a great idea. But it really doesn't become learning until we apply it, until we take it and we put it into action in some way. So I can learn how great it is to be a good listener to my wife, to my spouse, right? But unless I apply that, I've not really learned and grown in that area. I've only just gotten a little bit of head knowledge. And so we've got to be careful about that. The other caution that I might put inside there is that too often maybe we take an underdeveloped idea, meaning we just picked up a little nugget in a podcast or in a book that we read or an article or a conversation, and all of a sudden we think, we've got to do that. Well, the one thing with learning is that we really want to develop out that idea, and so really get into it and develop it out. And also be careful, don't chase the shiny object, right? So sometimes that's a little bit of a caution that we put there. But really this idea of thriving on new learning means that we see problems as things that need to be solved. We're not afraid of problems because we see them as things that we need to be solving.
I think about where does this start? It really starts with the values, and I don't want to take us on another track here, but culture versus values, really values inform your culture.
They do.
And so if learning is a part of your value system, it really does start with the top of the organization. It starts with the very top. And, again, learning is a key component of a growth culture.
Yeah, for sure. And, I think when you're thinking about learning, you realize that change is inevitable, right? Yeah. The point at which, as we develop as adults and we realize our life is going to be full of change. My kids don't really quite get that concept yet, right? Yeah. Things are comfortable. It's kind of the same day to day, week to week, year to year. But as we become adults, we realize change is inevitable and I'm going to have to grow. And if I can grasp that, then that gives me the ability to say, okay, I understand that I've got to embrace growth. So as that relates to a business, if change is inevitable, that means that I'm going to have to move into new markets at some point. There's going to have to be new customers that I'm going after, new sectors that I'm looking at. And I embrace that because I understand change is inevitable. I also understand that over time, I'm going to have to adopt new technology.
That's right.
Right? What worked back in 1984 isn't going to work today in the 2000s. And at some point, that's inevitable. And so I embrace that. I'm okay with that. I understand that the structure of our organization is likely going to have to change over time. As we grow, as we scale, we're going to have to bring in different levels of leadership, different types of people to run different portions of our organization. And I'm okay with that because I understand that change is inevitable. And that's really what it means to thrive on learning new things, which is a part of that growth culture.
Yeah, and I think about, revenue operations, what you're describing there, revenue operations is a key component in all of this, right? I mean, as to your point, change that's happening, new markets, new ways of buying require different customer journeys, which require different tools that facilitate that buyer journey, right? And,
course,
and
yeah.
all of those require you to learn. You cannot have a fixed mindset when it comes to, crafting a different type of customer journey, selling into enterprise, right? That requires a different sort of service and different processes altogether. Awesome. Well, let's move forward into. We had another section called "Learning from Your Mistakes." Let's talk about that. What do you mean there?
Yeah, I mean, I think the reality is that if you have a growth mindset, you realize that, one, you're going to make mistakes. Nobody's perfect. We're going to make mistakes as individuals. We're going to make mistakes as organizations. We're going to think we're heading in the right direction and ultimately figure out we're not heading in the right direction, right? But this growth mindset really allows us to look at a situation, a challenge, an issue, a problem, a mistake, and realize inside of all of that challenge is benefit. There's something I can learn. If nothing else, I'm learning what not to do the next time. But likely I'm learning more than that if I'm really able to embrace that challenge, that mistake, and say, okay, it's behind us. We can't go and undo it, but we can learn from it. Let's extract some benefit out of it. And that requires a growth mindset. A fixed mindset, it's going to look at that and say have more of a victim's mentality of saying it happened to me. I can't believe these things occurred. I can't believe that person did that, or this situation happened, or I can't control the economy, or whatever it is, and have more of that victim mentality. And listen, some of those things are true. You may not have been able to change what happened in the economy, but that doesn't mean that we still can't learn from it, right?
Yeah.
The other thing about learning from your mistakes, if you really have that as a part of your culture, so if an organization says, listen, it's okay to make mistakes, then that means that you can actually bring accountability to your teams because they're not afraid of being able to say, hey, I messed up here. This is a place where I made what I thought was a good assumption. I made an intelligent guess at what I thought the outcome would be, but it wasn't. And the people are willing to take ownership and responsibility. It fosters accountability because they're not afraid that every time they make a mistake that they might lose their job, or their boss is going to scream at them, or they're going to get pulled off of an important project, right? There's that environment where they can really have the ability to say, okay, I made a mistake. What do I learn from this? How do we grow and become better from this?
That is so applicable to everyday life, right? But in the context of an organization, it's I'm thinking of the C-suite, right? What are the people like that are leading the organization, and are those individuals, humble enough to learn from their mistakes, right? And that really sets the tone and goes back into, really representing those values and having those established. And I mean, that is a key pillar. I mean, the word that keeps coming up in my mind is just humility. Humility is required to move forward when things go wrong.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean that,
and you're giving away our fourth point, so don't go too deep. But you're right. But
I'll hold off.
You're absolutely right. I think the other thing is humility, but you also, it's almost like this. You've been around people that they just have positive. It's the glass half full person, right? Even when situations are tough, and I'm not talking about pretending the situation isn't tough and acting like nothing happened, but there's this positive mindset that says we can figure this out. Yeah. We can work through it. They can find the bright side of tough situations and say, here's something we learned. Here's how we're going to be better from this. Yeah. And they grow out of it rather than just stay stuck in it, or even worse, avoiding any mistakes in the future. We can't try that because it may not work. Yeah. If we don't go with any risk ever, there's very little upside of really growing and benefiting from taking some of those risks, right?
That's right.
That's a great one.
Yeah. So another part of the growth culture is driving innovation and iteration in your organization. Let's talk about that.
You're not going to innovate and you're not going to iterate and grow if your mindset is not on growth. If your mindset isn't saying, hey, listen, what got us to where we are today, the success that we're experiencing right now, is what we did to get here today is likely not what's going to keep us where we are or get us to the next place that we're trying to go. So we're grateful for everything that we experienced up to this point and the point that we're at now. Maybe we're at kind of what feels like the peak of the mountain. Yeah. But we understand that if we want to stay here, that we've got to continue to always say, how do we get better? How do we learn something new? How do we apply something new? And how do we push for future success and not just resting here?
Yeah, I think about, what organizations can do. I think about what we've ventured out into here with the podcast, right? It's just one example of trying something,
right?
And knowing that, when you look around, everything's moving so fast. Technology is accelerating, and so that requires you to constantly be on the up, right? What is working, what's not working, and if you're not asking those questions and you're not constantly evaluating, then you might miss that opportunity for growth. But like you said, it's part of the DNA of the organization. Like it has to be part of what you do day in and day out.
Right.
It can't just be a seasonal thing of, oh, we're going to innovate for the next couple of months. No, it has to be a constant conversation.
Of course, we've all heard the story of Blockbuster and Netflix, right?
Yes.
Blockbuster was the giant.
Yeah.
It seemed like no one could ever take them down, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if you're old enough to remember, but on Friday nights.
Do.
Okay, good. You are old enough to remember. You'd go on Friday nights, right? And you peruse the room and find the movie, and hopefully they had a copy of it, and it was already gone because the latest release came out and they got 68 copies of it, but you were the 69th person to show up, right? And so, but here's solidly seated as the number one in home entertainment for videos, and along comes this little company, Netflix. And you've heard the stories about the executives of Blockbuster laughing about these guys, Netflix.
They can't touch us. Yeah.
Exactly. And here we are in 2023, and there's no Blockbuster to be found, and all of us are streaming Netflix. And it's basically become a verb that we use now, right? Let's go Netflix, right? So, so anyway, it's just if you're not constantly looking for not just saying what we did got us here and we're okay with that.
Yeah. If
you're not constantly looking at how you can innovate and iterate, then you're likely not having a growth mindset or a growth culture within your organization.
Yeah.
I think about, it's. You've never arrived. It's fun to celebrate wins, but every year there's a new Super Bowl, there's a new World Series. Every championship that's ever been won there's every 4 years there's a new Olympics, right?
Yeah.
Those records, those wins, reaching the mountaintop doesn't mean you're there for the rest of your life. There's always somebody else that's willing to come and say, well, next year's my year. This year might have been your year, but next year's my year. Yeah. And so if you're not constantly chasing it, it's going to be challenging.
Yeah. You're only as good as your next sale or
Exactly. That's it. Wins are temporary. They're fun, but they're temporary.
Yeah.
So you go for the next one.
That's right. Well, now we get to the point in the conversation that I almost spoiled earlier. It keeps you humble. A growth culture keeps you humble. Let's talk about that.
Yeah. I think if you truly have a growth mindset and a growth culture, you realize that there is likely someone else out there that's smarter than you. There's likely someone else out there who's willing to work harder. They may not have been there last year, but now they may be there. There's likely someone out there that's smarter than you, that's willing to work harder. And honestly, there might be someone just luckier than you. Their timing was better than your timing was, whatever it is. But you realize that's a reality. And instead of saying, hey, I want to pretend like that doesn't exist, you just embrace that. And so because of that, it keeps you humble. And you realize that, one, you don't have to be the smartest person in the room every time. Yeah. You realize that bringing smart people around you, people that want to grow, that challenge ideas, that bring in new potential ways of doing things, isn't an offense to you, but instead you embrace that. You say, that's what I want. I want people around me that are going to challenge me, that are going to make me better. I know this is really not a great, it's not a huge story, but I remember back in my late 20s and early 30s, I started playing racquetball. And it was me and a buddy of mine that we would play, and we were pretty evenly, our talent level was about even. And so we'd go and we'd play, and in any given day, one of us would win, or maybe we'd have we'd tie across us, but we never got much better. Mm-hmm. Then we met this guy named Max. Max was probably 20 years our senior. Max didn't look like much, But it's not an exaggeration to say that I probably played 500 games of racquetball against Max and won 3 of them, right? There's always somebody better than me. But he made me a better racquetball player. So when I played other people, I got so much better by playing him that I performed better when I was playing other folks. And so I didn't have to be I realized that by me playing against someone who is smarter at me than racquetball, who is faster or better at me at racquetball, that it actually made me better, and it wasn't something to say, well, I don't want to do that because it's just uncomfortable. And so really allows us to stay humble.
Yeah, constantly challenging that. I mean, I think about, my own struggles at times with this growth versus fixed, and it's a daily battle. You have to constantly challenge yourself to go into the uncomfortable waters, right? And say, where am I today? And not say I should be over there. I should be way better than I am today, but just accepting today, what challenges are there today that I can say yes to, and what are the people around me, to your point, the smarter people around me that I can learn from. Right. And if you've got a group of people in an organization that all are firing on those cylinders, I mean, that accelerates you forward as an organization, because then you're in growth mode, right? You're constantly in growth mode.
Yeah. And when, to tie it back to kind of the RevOps idea, when we've seen folks really thrive as they built out, and these are mostly companies that did not have revenue operations prior. So they're hiring their first revenue operations leader. And when they bring that person in and they say, listen, we don't have it all figured out. We need you to bring your knowledge, your understanding, your ideas, your concepts to us, because we know we need to get to where a different place than we are. When we see that happen, man, it's huge success. It's scaling. I mean, it's exciting. You talk to those people, and both the leadership, the C leadership, and the RevOps leader, they're all excited about the things, the change, the growth, the scales, the impact, all of that. But then we have some situations where the leadership is wanting to say, nope, we've got it all figured out. Yeah. We know what we're talking about. They've never done it before, but they know what they need. They've got it all figured out. They want to dictate everything rather than lean on the understanding of somebody else, because they want to be the smartest person in the room in every area, rather than say, hey, listen, I know our business. I know who we are as an organization, but we really need someone that really understands revenue operations to come in and help us build this. When that happens, when they're very fixed and they say they've got it all figured out, oftentimes that RevOps leader is frustrated, or we've just flat out had candidates say, I can't go to work there. I can't work in that environment because they don't want me to bring ideas. They don't want me to bring change. They just want me to come in and build a system that they think is already going to work, but it's not really what they need, right? And so it becomes challenging. So if you really want to have that growth culture, listen and learn from others. Don't be threatened by them. Don't feel like it's an offense when somebody comes in with a new idea, but listen and learn and be open to the ideas of others. And I think that's what really will drive forward that whole growth culture that you're looking for within an organization. Yeah,
getting out of the way of really smart people is wisdom, right? I mean, that to your point with revenue operations and the success we've seen and the failure we've seen, a lot of times it comes down to that. It comes down to, what is your posture in the C-suite? Are you wanting to have total control, or are you saying, hey, we have a culture of entrepreneurs? Right. I mean, when we're on kickoffs with companies, a lot of times we dig into, what are your values? What's your culture look like? And the best cultures, which what we're talking about here is growth cultures, they have this DNA of, we want entrepreneurs, we want free thinkers, we want really smart people to do really good work, and we're going to get out of the way. We're going to let you do your thing. Right? As long as it's lining up with our overall mission and we're achieving our goals, that's a different, when things go wrong, that's a different conversation. But in general, our approach is, we want entrepreneurs, and we want to move forward, and we want to give you the freedom to do what you do best. And when that happens, that's a clear sign of a growth culture. And that's where we've seen success in RevOps.
That's right. That's right.
So Well, this has been a great conversation. I hope more companies choose that growth culture path.
And the good thing is that oftentimes the companies we're working with, that's
Right.
how they're getting to
Exactly.
that spot, right? So
Yeah.
if you're not quite there yet, but you're wondering, are we on? If you're growing and scaling, you've
Yeah.
likely had that growth culture.
Absolutely.
If you're stagnant, maybe look at it and say, hey, are we doing these things right? Are we allowing growth into our organization, or are we just trying to maintain the status quo?
Yeah.
And it's good litmus test for sure.
That's right.
Awesome. Well,
Awesome,
David,
Adam.
enjoyed it. Thanks for the conversation. It was fun.
Same here.
Yep.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the RevOps Recruiters podcast. If you found the information in this episode helpful, please consider subscribing. You can do that on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. Also, if you have comments or suggestions for future podcasts, we'd love to hear them. Please put those in the comments section on YouTube. Finally, if you're looking to hire your first or next RevOps leader, we'd love to help. You can connect with us through our website at www.revsearch.io. Thanks again for listening.